Welcome to Agree to Disagree, the podcast where two sisters show how you can disagree about everything but still keep that family bond and friendship.
That's right. We're Sharon and Karen. Settle in and enjoy the conversation. Who knows? You might even find yourself changing sides.
I'm Karen, coming at you from Morocco.
And I'm Sharon, coming at you from the great state of Texas.
Today we're going to talk about prayer in school and should be allowed in school.
Or mandated.
Because I think you're going to be surprised at my stance on this.
I don't think so.
Okay, where do you stand?
I think you're surprised at my stance.
On prayer in school?
That I believe in separation of church and state.
So you don't believe that there should be prayer in school?
I don't think there should be formalized prayer in school. If they want to in the morning or at some point during the day, they want to come across the system and say, we are now taking our 2-minute moment of silence for you to hear, pray, or contemplate, or meditate, or something like that. I would be okay with a moment of silence. To me, if there's prayer and they're doing it formally over the PA system like they did when we were growing up, then it's just one.
Wait, we didn't have prayer in school.
I remember prayers at football games. Every beginning of every football game, there was a prayer. They still do it at A&M football games. That is a school-sanctioned event.
Yeah, but that's not.
It is on campus.
That's not at school. That's different. That's a purely optional event that you can go to or not go to. School is not.
But I think that we did have.
No,
growing up, we would do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then somebody would come on and do a prayer.
No,
I remember it.
No,
I remember it.
You're wrong. Prayer has never been formal. You're wrong because the prayer has never been a formal part of the education system in Texas. Not for probably, if it ever was, for a very long time because of separation of church and state. Do you think for a minute?
Texas would allow?
Do you think for a minute that Texas, if it once had formalized prayer in school, especially as early as the 70s, would have ever gotten rid of it or would not be screaming to go back to it?
Well, we wouldn't necessarily be screaming to go back to it.
Say what?
I'm a Texan.
In the Bible?
I'm a native Texan. Okay, first of all, Texas is actually not a part of the Bible Belt.
Say that to all the Bible thumpers.
No, I'm serious.
You're going to get a lot of comments about that. We are the Bible Belt.
No. It's really more Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. That's really the Bible Belt. I don't think Texas really falls into the Bible. I never have. I've never thought that.
Just to be clear, that's Sharon saying that Texas is not part of the Bible Belt. It is.
Yes, that's right. I do not consider as part of the Bible Belt. And I'm a Christian and I lived in the South, but in the South, and I don't consider Texas
the South.
Oh my God.
No. Wow, you are going to get hate mail now. And you call yourself a true Texan? You do not consider Texas the South?
We are South Central. We are South Central. We're not the South. We're not the South. The South is Alabama, Georgia, the Panhandle of Florida, and Mississippi. That's the South. I lived in those states. Remember? I lived in those states, Karen. I lived in those states.
I believe you're saying Texas is not the South.
I lived in those states.
Wow.
They are not.
That's blasphemy.
I'm saying.
That's just blasphemy.
I'm saying that Texas is. The reason I say that Texas is not part of the South is because Texas is its own thing. We're not a part of the Midwest.
Because Texas is special. Texas
we are special.
Its own thing.
That's right.
Texas is too special to be part of anything else. Texas doesn't need any other classification because it's Texas.
That's right.
I actually am starting to think that prayer should be brought back into the schools in a Christian country, in a religious country.
But you still are going to have people in that religious country that have multiple different religions. So how do you...
I think that they should have time set aside each day for prayer. I do not think that it should be something that is stay in your seat and let's have a 5 minutes of silence because, like you said, Muslims need to go and pray facing Mecca and bow down. So their prayer is different.
Right.
So I think that a prayer space should be available. And I think that there should be at the beginning and at the end of the day, that there should be an additional, 10 to 15 minutes allotted for children to pray. A prayer area for Christians, a prayer area for Jews, a prayer area for
Jews,
Muslims.
For Buddhists. Now, would you accept?
For Buddhists, a prayer area can accommodate a lot of different religions.
Yes, but you're saying separate prayer areas?
No, I'm saying a prayer
just
area. One prayer area
for
that
any
can accommodate multiple religions. And so that anyone
and are you okay? Are you okay if somebody is a Wiccan and wants to pray twice a day in a school that's Wiccan?
If that's what they want to do, why would I have a problem with that?
Because a lot of people have a problem with that particular religion.
But they're praying on their own. They're not forcing it down someone else's throat.
Okay. I'm just clarifying.
Yeah, because the U.S., along with a lot of other countries in the world, are experiencing a turn away from religion.
What are you saying that
a lot of countries are experiencing this, definitely in the UK. People are turning away from religion. It's happening in the U.S. as well. People are turning away from religion.
Oh, I'm not going to disagree with it happening in the U.S.
Yeah, it's happening in other countries as well. It's not just the U.S.
But why is it the school's responsibility to...
I'm not saying it's their responsibility. They're not saying you have to go pray. They're not saying I'm not going to teach you to pray.
Yeah, but you are saying
available.
carve out 30 minutes to allow for it, 15 minutes on each side of the day.
I don't think that's a big deal.
But so here's the other, I
think that could be part of 15 minutes of a recess. That you say this is a recess, or you can go and pray if you want.
So if they decide to pray instead of recess, then you're not meeting the laws around physical activity requirements for kids in school. You can't take the place of one educational mandate.
I don't see that 15 minutes, or even if you just do it 15 minutes a day, I don't think that adding 15 minutes a day to try to reinforce spirituality in the population would be a bad thing.
Talk to the finance people that are paying the bills, though. That 15 minutes that you're adding onto every single day means an hour and 15 minutes a week that you're paying faculty to be there monitoring things, more so than what they would before if you're adding it.
Logistically, I don't know how it would work.
But again, that's what we're doing, though, right? We're talking about it. So I'm just somebody that believes in separation of church and state. Am I okay with a 2-minute time frame? Nobody says that people can't pray at school. I'm an individual. I can pray whenever I want to. I'm not broadcasting it. They could do it at lunch. Do you know how many Christians sit at lunch? I see it in restaurants all the time. They sit, they get their meal, and the entire table prays, bows their head, closes their eyes, and prays before anybody at that table takes a bite of food. I see it in restaurants all the time. Why can't that happen at lunch in schools?
Yeah.
I just solved your logistics problem. There you go.
Yeah.
But here's the separation of church and state argument, though, right? If there's any kind of room that is set aside or specific time that is set aside, then you are asking taxpayers to pay for that space, that time, for the faculty to be present. And then because of that, you are then combining church and state.
Well,
you hate it when I'm logical.
No, that's not where I was going with that side. I'm trying to think if we go with your idea of just a moment of silence, like 5 minutes or a couple of minutes, a moment of silence to be spiritual.
That's adding 25 minutes a week.
Yeah.
Right. But 5 minutes a day. So if somebody's atheist, then they're just going to daydream or start working. They're not going to talk, but they're going to just start working or do whatever they want to do. Go to the bathroom.
I guess my question would be, why are people pushing so hard for mandated prayer in school then?
Probably for the same reason that you brought up earlier, that societies are moving away from religion. So they're seeing this as an opportunity to maybe help instill it in some form or fashion in a more formalized way where kids are getting exposed to it all the time. But if it's not happening at home, giving a kid a moment of silence at school to pray, but they have no idea how to pray because they've never been exposed to it at home. They don't go to church. You're just giving that kid a moment of silence. It's not doing anything for that child if they're not getting it at home as well, or if they've never been exposed to it. You see what I'm saying? I don't think that's the solution if that's what's driving this. Personally, for me, the people that are driving it are probably the very fundamentalist, narrow-minded. It's all about, Christianity and not other religions. Yeah. I'm thinking, in the States.
Now here,
because that's what I'm thinking.
So we're in a Muslim country, but if you attend Moroccan schools, then you have mandatory Islamic studies. So the study of Islam.
Okay.
It's not prayer. They don't pray in school, but it's the study of Islam, which includes the study of the prayers as well. So, but is it necessarily a bad thing to have, which I don't disagree with here because it's a predominantly Muslim country?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's a small country that's predominantly Muslim, but in the U.S., nothing like that would ever fly.
But why? What is the harm in having Christian studies? It's not prayer, but why can't you have a religious studies class that teaches about Christianity? In a Christian country, why would that be so far-fetched?
Because this isn't a Christian country.
It is Christian.
We're not
still
just
a predominantly Christian country.
But we have every single religion known to man out there in this country. So if you mandate a class on all of the religions in the world, right? So that you're covering everything. Do I think that should be mandated? Well, again, I'm going back to my fiscal argument here. Again, then you're saying taxpayers are paying faculty for the curriculum, for the space to teach about all the different religions.
Teaching about religion is not converting someone. It's not.
No, but you're still mixing church and state. You're still mixing church and state.
I disagree with that. I think that teaching someone about religion is not the same as saying you must practice that religion. And I think in a Christian country, I think it is not unreasonable to say we are going to teach about Christianity in our schools.
But you can't do that. You can't teach about Christianity when you have half of your class are Muslim.
Why not?
Or half your class. You can't.
Why not?
Because that's not right. It's not okay to mandate.
We have Jews in Morocco. We have Christians in Morocco. If they go to those schools.
But you have a different governmental structure than we do. You have a different government than we do. In our type of democracy, that is not okay. You don't force one view or your view on somebody and mandate them to learn.
I don't think it's forcing a view. You should be able to teach something without trying to convert people. If you're teaching something,
that doesn't. No, now we're going back to abuse. Now we're going back to the setting up the potential for abuse. Now because there have been in the U.S. in the last couple of years in the U.S. in universities, not even in the public schools. Well, public universities it's happening, but also private universities it's happening. There are professors that teach their opinion on whatever their study stuff. They are trying to teach, you have to believe this way. And if you don't, you're going to fail my class. Like that's
always been in universities. Right now. That's always been in universities. That's always been the way in at university level. This is what I teach. This is what I want you to believe. It's always been that way in universities. I'm talking about curriculum that, yes, there is room for abuse, but do you think that there's not abuse happening the way that stuff is being taught now? History is being taught from the perspective of the teacher, not necessarily factual information. So there's no more room for abuse there than there would be for teaching about Christianity or about Judaism. Again, you can still touch on other religions. To me, it's information. But then if it's a Christian nation, which it is still a Christian nation, predominantly Christian nation.
I don't think you can say that it's predominantly a Christian nation. In order to do something like that and mandate the teaching of just one religion in a school here.
No, I'm not saying you teach just one religion. You teach about Christianity. You can talk about all religions. Like you can have a small part
you're
where
saying
you teach others, but it should be predominantly Christian. In a predominantly Christian nation, I think there's nothing wrong with it.
I need to agree to disagree with you because I disagree on that. There's no way you can mandate one class to teach all religions. And again, you disagreed with me on when I said you're still combining church and state. And you're saying it's not because the country is predominantly Christian. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with Christianity. It has to do with,
it's not.
It doesn't matter what the church is.
I say it's not combining church and state because you're not going to church to hear a sermon. You're not sitting there and just listening to a sermon. You're just hearing this is what they believe. To me, it's no different. For someone to teach a class about religion, just say this is what these people believe, because that's essentially what it's going to be, in my opinion. The class would be, this is what Christians believe. This is the way they think. It wouldn't be any different than saying, this is what the KKK believes. This is what the frontiersmen believed. This is what the Native Indians believed. To me, it's just another part of history. This is how Christianity came about. This is what they believed. You would be teaching it from a third party.
Okay. If it is just historical, if it is just the historical tenets and philosophies and history of religion, then and it covers all religions in the world, like it'd be a part of a world history curriculum. Then I would be okay with it.
Yes.
Then I would be okay with it.
I think you would touch on other religions. I don't think they would be as big a component of the course as Christianity.
Why not?
Because Christianity has had a much bigger impact.
So whether it's a fact or not, you can't.
You still don't want it anywhere near your schools.
I don't. I did this with my kids. I exposed them to several different denominations when they were growing up. Several different denominations of Christianity, because that's what I knew, But I always told them about other religions as well and told them it is not for me to decide what you think about religion or what religion you want to subscribe to or if you want to subscribe to a religion or not. And,
awesome. That's not what I'm saying. I think that's great. But what I'm saying is my kids, when they were going to the Moroccan school, they had Islamic studies. And they would learn things in that class that I disagreed with, that I thought were very old school thinking and not relevant.
So there you go. So,
it proves my point more because they would come home and then we would talk about it. And it would lead to a discussion that we might not have had otherwise. So to me, it wasn't a bad thing.
But my kids didn't have any formal classes about Christianity or any other religions in school. And I still had those conversations with my kids.
Yeah, but you don't know what other conversations you could have had. But this goes to the point of some kids are not exposed to it at home. You and Randy went to church more than David and I did.
More, y'all never went.
Well, I went occasionally. I remember sitting there a few times.
I think you only came when Randy and I got baptized.
Yeah. We were not raised in a religious household.
No,
so
we were not.
If we had those conversations at school, it may have prompted us to come home and think about religion differently. You don't know. And I'm saying, I think it's a way to expose kids to religion that they're not getting at home right now. Some kids that are not getting it at home and do not have parents that have the time, energy, effort, or inclination to have those discussions that you had with your kids.
I'm not disagreeing with your point on that. I really am not. I totally see your point on that. I disagree with church and state. And to me, that's still bordering on church and state because churches are religious entities. So if we are mandating a class on religion, but if we are mandating that the state do a class on religion, then since churches are religious entities, then we are combining church and state. But I think we're going to agree to disagree on this one for sure, which is all good, right? I think it's just, to me, religion is a very man-made construct.
Well, the tricky part comes in.
You'd have to teach every single religion. And I can guarantee you there are going to be, and I'm just going to throw this out here, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate mail about this. It's probably going to be mostly Christians that will say, no, you can't teach Wiccan religion. That is a religion. It is a religion. I had a friend that was a Wiccan, and I learned a lot, and I read books, and I talked to her all the time about it because I wanted to learn about it and understand it. But there are people that are very scared of that religion.
But I think that goes to the point of having a good enough curriculum set out that you could say, you're not teaching Wicca. You're not trying to convert them. You're just telling them that it exists and this is what they believe. And then you're highlighting some points. You're doing that about every religion. It's just Christianity. There's more history to talk about, and you can talk about some historical things about Wiccans because there are.
That was a primary. Well, that was a primary religion before Christianity. I mean, it's a pagan religion.
Talk about that.
Paganism
in a historical context, there is a lot of religion that comes into it. So I don't understand why it would be that big of a deal. To me, the problem would come in.
It's not to you, but it will be to some because they see it because Christians historically think that pagans and paganism and religions that are bad.
I would counter with, wouldn't you rather them know what pagans believed or what historically it was thought that they believed and how they were a part of our history rather than just not addressing it at all? I don't believe, and this is what I fear that the U.S. seems to be turning to right now, is if we have a part of our history that we don't like, we're just not going to talk about it.
Oh, no, that'll be a whole nother topic for you because I think you and I agree on that. I think we agree on it because that's ticked me off to no end.
But so
over the last couple of years.
So can't you see that talking about religion openly in school, and this was in an ideal world, you have a good curriculum and you have good professors that can actually intelligently talk about it without
therein lies the rub.
Yes,
therein lies the rub. We don't live in an ideal world.
And we don't treat our teachers with enough respect and pay them well enough to have really good educators for the most part.
Exactly.
But I do think there is a role for teaching religion, having something like religious studies. And I don't think it's out of the world to think that in a Christian society.
I think if it is strictly historical and every religion is covered, one is not predominant over any other ones. However, I think it would be a very difficult thing to do to not then have discussions in that classroom morph into spirituality, and then you're in deep dog doo-doo.
I don't think so. I think
you're in deep dog doo-doo then.
I don't think so. I think you can have discussions.
Because now you're combining church and state.
No, you're not saying get on the floor and pray. You're not saying sit there and pray to what God I tell you to pray to.
Yeah, but conversations about spirituality, that's such a personal thing. And I don't think it should be in a public setting that taxpayers are paying for because it's going to create a lot of issues. I think it'll create a lot of issues. We think we're a litigious society now.
I think it would be
beneficial
to society. That's what
I think I can see it in a country like Morocco. There is no way I could ever envision it being beneficial in a country like the U.S. because of our size, our melting pot.
Well, the size could change. You're either going to get bigger or smaller soon, I think.
I'm fine if Texas just succeeds and we just annex Mexico or something. I'll get hate mail on that one too.
I think it's very funny that you think Texas will annex Mexico.
Not funny. That's in my mind. That's how it's going to work. So we're going to agree to disagree on this one. I think prayer in school, we did not agree. And it's very interesting because I think that probably my viewpoint of complete separation of church and state might be a little bit more of a liberal view in the U.S.
Yes, and mine is a much more conservative view.
And yours is much more conservative view in
Yes.
the U.S., So it's interesting where you and I fell on that. That wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and review. It helps us improve and get the word out.
Reach out to us on Facebook and Instagram or shoot us an email at agreetodisagree@gmail.com.
Let us know what you think, what topics you'd like us to cover, or any questions you might have. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.